name's Argy, and if you take a look back to early October, the build up to Chapter 2 was something we'd never seen before. The Fortnite servers had gone completely offline for days, with no communication from Epic about when the servers would be back online. This led to literally hundreds of thousands of people tuning into Black Hole streams, as we all eagerly anticipated the arrival of Chapter 2. The hype level of the Fortnite player base was at a sky high, which clearly shows that there is still a huge appetite for Fortnite. However, with such a massive build-up comes raised expectations. So as Season 2 is finally almost here, I thought this would be a good moment to look back on the first season of Chapter 2 and decide whether it has managed to live up to the hype. So with the help of a lot of you online, in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at the best and worst parts of this season, before deciding whether it was a success overall. So let's start with a positive. The map. For a long time, people were desperate for Epic to give us a brand new map. The original map had changed substantially over the course of the first 10 seasons, but people were still desperate for something entirely new, and in Chapter 2, we finally got it. And I'm a huge fan of the new map. There are so many great places to land in Chapter 2, like Misty Meadows, Slurpy Swamp, and Sweaty Sands. But they also kept some great POIs from the first chapter, like Pleasant, Retail, and Salty. So I really enjoyed spending the first month or two exploring the new map, and I really do believe that Epic have done a great job with it. None of the POIs dominate the map like Tilted used to in Chapter 1, which I think is a great aspect of this map, as it means that you can land in almost any location and be able to get some early action. Whereas in the last chapter, if you didn't land at Tilted, Salty, or Retail, then the chances are that you'd have a dead early game. So I'm a big fan of this new map, which has made it so surprising when I've seen so many people complaining about it and wishing we had the old map, which I simply can't understand. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed many variations of the Chapter 1 map, but I do believe it got stale, and with the state they left it in Season X, I was glad to see the back of it. Remember, this is just the start of the Chapter 2 map, so we will see it develop a lot over the following seasons. But why did so many people have an issue with the Chapter 2 map? Well, that brings me to the first negative of this season, the lack of mobility. With the Chapter 2 map being even bigger than the original map, you'd expect there to be plenty of ways to get around the map, especially with us having so many forms of mobility last season. However, the only forms of mobility in Chapter 2 so far have been the boats and swimming, both of which are certainly useful, but they're only helpful when you're near water. Otherwise, you'll have to run. Because of this, people have been dying to the storm far more frequently than in the past few seasons. It has also caused mid-games to become fairly boring, as once you've finished your early game fights, you can be stuck running around the map trying to find players for 5 to 10 minutes, simply because everyone is so spread around the map, with no quick way of finding players. This has made it so much more difficult to get high kill games. Epic did eventually bring back launch pads, which was nice to see, but it was far too late into the season, and they're very rare, so in reality, they don't have a big impact on most matches. Because of this, the lack of mobility has been one of the community's biggest complaints for this season. Although swimming and boats might not have been enough mobility for most players, the numerous rivers around the map weren't early in the game to help players get around it, as they had another purpose. Which brings me to the next strength of this season: fishing. This brand new mechanic was an amazing addition by Epic, and it's had a genuinely huge impact on the game, in a positive way. It allowed for players to obtain heals and weapons without having to rely on chest and floor loot RNG, which was a welcome change. What this meant is that as long as you spent enough time fishing, you could end up with plenty of heals. This was a welcomed addition to the game, and just the start of many great changes to the game this season, or at least that's what we thought. Which brings me to our next negative of this season: the lack of updates. The Fortnite player base has become accustomed to the game constantly getting new updates every single week, whether that be new weapons and items, map changes, or balance updates. This didn't always benefit the game, with Epic frequently receiving a lot of criticism from their players for making bad changes to the game. But whilst this might have led to controversy at times, it did at least keep the game fresh, with there constantly being new content to keep bringing you back to the game. However, in Chapter 2, Epic completely changed their approach to content updates, with them making minimal changes throughout the season. And when they actually did introduce new weapons, a lot of the time they didn't receive a great response from players, such as the lightsabers, blaster rifles, and the snowball launchers, all of which were okay additions initially, but I do think that they outstayed their welcome. Also, since the Rocket event of Season 4, there has been an ongoing storyline in the world of Fortnite, which has kept people excited about what was going to happen and how it would impact the game. However, so far in Chapter 2, there's been almost no attempt to develop the game's storyline. It's only been in the last few days where we've finally started to see some noticeable changes, with the furniture in the middle island starting to become gold, which you'd have to assume is hinting about what will happen next season. But this was far too late. Because of this, once the novelty of the new map wore off, there was rarely anything new to bring back players to the game and keep them intrigued. So many people simply stopped playing. And even worse, when Epic did make changes to the game, a lot of the time they didn't even give players a heads up about what was happening, with them deciding to almost completely stop communicating with the players, which left many players, including myself, confused about what Epic was playing at. Something that has seen a more mixed response from players this season has been the loot pool. Now, in Chapter 2, a lot of people expected a massive revamp of the loot pool, with lots of new weapons and items. However, that wasn't really the case. We got a few new additions, like the bandage bazooka and the harpoon, but that was near enough it. Instead, Epic decided to strip back the loot pool and get rid of a lot of weapons and items. And initially, this back to basics approach from Epic felt refreshing and almost felt like a callback to the first ever season, when the loot pool was really small. Suddenly, almost every weapon you got was usable, with a lot of the filler added in previous seasons removed from the game. However, as the season went on, it only highlighted how little variety there is in the loot pool. With people generally using the same weapons each game, it meant that almost every fight would play out exactly the same way. Also, with RPGs and snipers being so common, this led to a lot of complaints from players. Personally, this didn't really affect me too much, but it's been a common complaint from the community all season. And if we had a larger loot pool, then snipers and RPGs wouldn't be spawning in at such a ridiculously high rate. And we can't talk about Chapter 2 without discussing the cross-platform matchmaking, as this has been the biggest talking point all season, with players being put into the same lobbies regardless of whether they played on PC, console or mobile. This was clearly done by Epic to help with queue times, as they decided to introduce skill-based matchmaking to pubs, but it's inevitably caused a lot of frustration from players, who have complained that they shouldn't be playing against others who have a significant hardware advantage over them. I won't go into it too much, as I've already covered it in previous videos, but I'm sure we can all understand why this has been such a big issue for many players. So clearly, Season 1 of Chapter 2 has been a very mixed season. There's been a lot of great aspects of the season, but many not so great aspects as well. However, the introduction to Chapter 2 is actually the most excited I've been to play Fortnite for a long time. During the first month or two of the season, I simply couldn't stop playing. I felt addicted to the game again, something that I'd not felt for many seasons. However, we get to the final point with the main criticism for the season that was almost universally agreed by players, that the season was simply way too long. I released a poll online asking people their thoughts about this season, and almost every single response mentioned that this season was way too long, which is understandable, considering it's lasted almost twice as long as every other season, except with far less content than we used to. During the first half of the season, I couldn't stop playing, but as the season dragged on, I near enough stopped playing entirely, instead choosing to play box fights in creative or other games entirely. So overall, I can't say that this was a great season, as I barely played during the second half, but I also can't say it was a bad season, as the joy I felt when playing in that first month or two was genuinely special. Just a couple months back, I tweeted out that it was my favourite season since the third season, and at the time, that was definitely true. But as the season went on, Chapter 2's issues came to the forefront, and they couldn't be ignored any longer. Had the season lasted 10 weeks, like they usually do, I'd have said that it was easily one of the best seasons ever. But obviously, that wasn't the case. So overall, I'd say Season 1 was a fairly good start to Chapter 2 that could have easily been great. But unfortunately, I think I'm in the minority on that, as the results of the poll I released the other day shows that out of 222 votes, less than 37% considered this season to be good, or better, with the rest of the players finding this fair season of Chapter 2 to be meh or worse. So clearly, this has been a very disappointing season for many players. So hopefully, Epic learns from their mistakes this season. There must have been a reason why they decided to add almost no new content and extend the season multiple times. So hopefully, Season 2 is worth all the build up, because honestly, I don't think Epic can continue to frustrate their players for much longer. So, what did you think about this season? Did it live up to the hype for you? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you want to support me as a content creator, then feel free to use my creator code, which is on the screen now. So anytime you buy something in the item shop and use my code, it will go directly towards supporting the channel, which would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more. And I'll see you next time for another video. Goodbye.